is how we build these awesome shows. So without further ado, Mr. Dave Francoeur and Chris Nowak.
Thank you. Thank you, MD Publishing. Thank you very much. Without them, none of this is possible. So here we are. Oliver Hardy, Stan Laurel. You know why that is. But Dave, go ahead and say a few words about yourself.
Sure. Dave Francoeur, for any of you who don't know me, I'm with an organization called TKA, Technology Associates. We are an outsourced solution. We provide clinical engineering services. We have an RTLS system, which is fairly good. We have something called READI, R-E-A-D-I, reliable equipment available, disinfected and inspected, and we provide cleaning services, disinfecting services between those uses. I've been in the industry longer than I care to admit, more than 35 years. I've participated in a lot of things that would help the organization and the industry in terms of aiming your state president's association. I've been in the industry, and my goal here is, fortunately, Chris asked me to be a partner. These are all is to just have fun today and try to learn something and to share with each other. I can always learn from you. Hopefully, we can share something with you, and that's what I would say.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So Chris Nowak, I run an in-house biomedical program for Universal Health Services. Universal Health Services, UHS. No, it has nothing to do with agility or the old UHS. We own and operate hospitals, much like HCA or Tenet and one of those organizations. We have hospitals all over the country. That one? That helps. And in fact, we have 8 hospitals right here in the Las Vegas area, which has openings, by the way. So director, technician openings, and I have an opening in Amarillo, Texas. Beautiful Amarillo, Texas. University Teaching Hospital. Anybody needs a wonderful garden spot, come see me after the presentation. But hey, today's presentation, Dave and I, we want this to be a lot of fun. All right. We want to present topics. We're going to talk about topics. It's interactive. Without you folks participating in today's presentation, this is not going to go well. You don't want to hear it. I'm talking to pontificate about philosophies of HTM. But this is an interactive presentation. So yeah, we're going to introduce some topics, talk about things, talk about, you might go in one way, I'm going another way, and learn from one another. As Dave mentioned, we want you to take a nugget or two away from this presentation so it helps you in your organization or your team deliver exceptional patient care for those that walk through our front doors. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is non-traditional responsibilities. What value are you providing for your employer and the customers you serve? So what's that all about? That's a loaded question. So non-traditional. So, you know, some of the things that pop up into my mind are like beds, nurse call systems. Yeah, great. TVs. So cyber secure beds, acute surgery, nurse call systems. Imagine we got all that. RTLS, temperature monitoring. You know, a lot of times that gets dumped into the IT bucket. And then CMMS integration with other tools. So I'll talk about that. I'm excited about that one. But yeah, so how about anybody else want to throw one in? Dan?
I worked for an organization one time where out of the biomed department, we managed patient lifts and turns because of the aging nursing population. They were getting hurt. I worked with Aramark, who did a facility, a system called Bond Support, and we hired PT students to help with the lifts and turns, so the nursing staff didn't have to do it on the patients. And Chris, if I can, so one resulted in a patient had a bad outcome, passed away after 30 days, and our 4-person team with the pallbearers.
Wow.
They got such a relationship with that thing.
Wow. Yeah. And Dave, you mentioned it, what your company does, the cleaning and disinfecting and distribution. So we're throwing some subjects out now. We'll talk a little bit about it. You know, so one of the things that I'm keenly involved with is in my organization is cybersecurity. So my IT department, we have a great IT department. They do a great job with desktop computers, things like that, building management systems, managing all that. But when it comes to medical devices, they know they're on the network, and they know there's an IP address out there that pertains to a medical device. But what we're doing is we have a tool, we use a tool, an IoT, IOMT tool that locates, because prior to that, we were asking our technicians, like Beaver, others, to fat finger in the IP address, the MAC address. What kind of compliance do you think I had with that? It wasn't very good. They're busy folks, right? And that takes time. So I talked to my senior leadership. We were able to purchase a tool that sits on the network, listens to the traffic, and it finds those medical devices on the network. And we have an integration with our CMMS product so that that can now be matched up, can bring in the IP address for that system, MAC address, and any other operating system. Lots of different metrics, metadata that can come into my tool. And now my IT department knows with certainty if there's an anomaly on the network. They can now identify, oh, you know what, that's the CT on the 4th floor, and they can do whatever they need to do to shut down, if they need to shut something down, or do something to stop any kind of anomaly. So if you're not doing cybersecurity, it's a great tool to educate yourself. They would love for you to get engaged in it because, like I said, IT has their hands full. I was on a call with our IT security team. They had we have the same an event management tool, right? Over 70,000, 72,000 and change events. So how do they sift through that? What kind of, these are anomalies that the same as detected on the network through other tools. Use a Cisco tool, but they can't sift those. So now we have a tool that provides them with a little bit better granularity on what to better target as an anomaly and as anything that needs to be remediated. Beds. Anybody doing beds? Yeah, beds. Beds are so important. Usually it's maintenance. I don't want to do beds. They're big, they're heavy, they take up a lot of room. Let's maintenance do it. What do you think maintenance is going to do? Contract it out. Well, they're going to hire a striker, they're going to hire a go-around, they're going to contract it out. And those contracts are very expensive. I think here in the Valley, that's one. We had over $500,000 in service contracts on over on beds. And we hired the guy, and we brought beds in-house. But the bed is such an integral part. How do we medicate the patient? We medicate the patient based on the weight of the patient. Almost all the beds have a scale in them. Before long, those beds are going to be integrated on the network, right? So now the weight's going to be automatically deposited in EMR. It's going to know whether or not the rail is up, the rail is down, because it's fall prevention. Okay, so they're going to be on the network pretty soon, folks. There are beds that can do that. It's just a matter of your facility wanting to do that. Yours are on the network? Yeah. Your maintenance guys handling that stuff?
No, actually, Striker will. What they just gave it Striker on the contract, they have a person that's on as part of our facility that's all he does.
Yeah. It's a lot of money. There's call systems. Another great opportunity for you to provide value to your facility. Ryan over here. Ryan gave a great presentation yesterday. Ryan takes care of the nurse call, does all the programming for the nurse call. He gave a great presentation that talked about how nimble they can be to make changes for the nursing staff. Let's face it, all of this is, we want to make it easy for the caregiver, right? They do patient care, not equipment care. I'm gonna I'll throw a bomb out here and see how. So we don't use PM stickers in our program, no PM stickers. And, oh my gosh. But if what's the requirement by CMS?
Yeah, you didn't know. It's within tolerance.
So, but what does CMS tell it, what's my compliance?
100%. Yeah,
100%, right? So, 100%. If I gotta rely on the nurse or the rad tech or the lab tech to do our job and to find medical devices, then we probably have another one. We're fixing the wrong problem. So my CMMS, we have, our nurses have WOWs, barcode scanners. And guess what? There's the app on the WOW. So when the surveyor comes in, we happen to be Joint Commission survey. When the surveyor comes in and says to the nurse or the rad tech, hey, when's the next PM due on that? So, okay, let me do mine. Oh, it was last done here, it's due here. They don't have to. And you know what the greatest testimonial for that was? One of my directors called me, based in South Carolina. You know, they went to one of the off-site facilities, the tracer, and he was panic stricken because the surveyor asked, when's the next PM due on that? And that person knew how they do it. He was blown away. And so was the surveyor. The survey was over. That was the end for HTM. Survey was over. It was done. So, so yeah, and you know what else? You want an AEM program? You do AEM? Yeah, you do AEM. So hopefully you do AEM. So what if you want to change, you know, now you have a bunch of data, and based on that data, now I want to change the frequency. Instead of doing it every 6 months, now I want to do it every year. Well, if you use stickers, you better get your team out on the floor and scratch all those stickers off and replace them with the new due date, because the surveyor, they don't care. Because if your policy says that you use stickers to determine for your clinicians when it's due, you better have a sticker that's accurate. If it's inaccurate, and the reason why that is such a thing in my head and why I went down this path is one night I was having dinner with George Mills, and he told me the story about this gal from the VA up in the state of Washington. And she was so upset because she was cited for that exact reason, but her policy said they made the PM change. He said, yeah, but your policy also says you use stickers, and you didn't go out and change the sticker. Well, no, but my policy said, no. Your policy says you're going to use stickers. So for AEM, that was a great thing for us. We can flex and make changes on the fly and to our policies, and we don't have to do all that extra labor and go find stickers and peel them off.
But then you're gonna lose out on those wonderful yellow sticky notes that just say Pro.
Or all the glue that's on there.
Won't that make you sad? You go from that Pro
Oh,
sticky note?
we still get those. We get.
I want that work process to go away because, you know, hearts are broken.
You don't have the paper towel saying broken. It's not really broken.
RTLS is another great, you know, and I'm talking about all this stuff. If you do the Pro Forma, right? So hopefully you're doing Pro Forma, you do the value analysis for your leader, right? So because what I want to do is when I look at those service contracts on the striker beds or service contracts on the nurse call system, you know, we had a nurse call system, $100,000 it was costing us in maintenance. And, you know, once you do the analysis for your leader, do that performance, show, hey, you know what? In the end, I can hire another FTE. I'm going to drop these contracts, hire another FTE. I'm going to save $50,000 with the fully loaded FTE in there. But that's the kind of thing that this is why I say take this over, take these opportunities, because they say if your beds are going to maintenance isn't doing it because it's contracted in. Your nurse call maybe goes to IT. Guess what? IT's not working. Dan.
When you're doing the ROI, like you're talking about, value analysis, the important thing too that I think people forget is if you can save them $50,000 at the bottom line, like you just said, on one contract, and they're operating at a 5% profit margins, if that, that's $1 million in patient revenue just offset.
You are right in my blade. It's exactly, know what your margin is. Know what your net margin is for your health system. I was working for, it was 3%. You know, the amount of revenue that they would have to do in cardiac cases or ortho cases to make up for that savings is just phenomenal. They couldn't achieve it. They wouldn't be able to get there. There's some of the stuff that we could drop.
How many people know what their margin is? 2. It's a great thing to know. Because to these guys' point, it really helps. And you're trying to drive home why you want more resources, why you want to do. You really want to know it.
Your leadership knows. They know exactly where the margin is.
Well, you're going to come across it a lot more. And know to say, man, I need to listen to this guy. That's really important. So this person.
Yeah. I talked about a little RTLS temperature monitoring. That's low hanging fruit. Get involved in that. Lurie Children's Hospital, I was at there with Crawford Healthcare, and we did all of the RTLS, the badges, management of the badges. Nursing is such a great satisfier for nursing. It's fantastic. This last one I'm really excited to talk about. So we have a nice CMS product. One of the things that happens in the operating room is that they have to document all the tools, all the medical devices they're going to use on that patient or that case. Well, I don't know what happens at your place, but at our place, circulators in there, literally every device, factoring in some kind of identifier for that medical device, whether it's the serial number, your inventory sticker, or whatever it is. So they're going around the hotel, fact figuring stuff in. We were like, wait a minute, we have the CMMS system. We have Cerner, we're a Cerner house. Let's talk to Cerner and let's see if we can do some integration. So we did. It was such an easy lift. I want to say within a month, we already had it figured out. Is Harseed in here? Harseed's not in here. He's my system administrator that managed that whole project. But I would say it was within a month, we had it all figured out between our in-house Cerner people, Cerner corporate, and my CMMS provider. So now, remember I told you the circulator, the nurse in the OR, they got the same wow kind of stuff with Cerner in it, same wireless barcode scanner. Now what we do, we have an integration with Cerner, with our CMMS, and now all they do is in Cerner, they're in the location where they document what equipment they're going to use. They walk over to the device, the barcode, we have our barcodes in. It just loads it right in because it's pulling it from my database. And that database is up to date. It is such an easy, you talk about it satisfying. I mean, I'm getting on the phone with our corporate nursing directors. There's one hospital we still don't have because we're not a full owner of that hospital. It's like a 49% hospital. And Monica and Rudy are here from Southwest or South Texas Health System. It's a cornerstone hospital. It's a smaller hospital focused on orthopedics, but that's the only hospital that doesn't have it just because of the way the structure was financially and how many calls have we had? Can we please have it? Can we please have it? So Monica's got the everything in place now, and it's such a satisfier, and it's such an easy thing to do. So
the question I would ask is, in our role, so most people probably understand the definition of a medical device, right? Treatment, diagnosis, monitoring of a patient. So what we did is we added 4th word, we took comfort. And that helps people get their head wrapped around. There's other things that we can be doing that bring value to the organization. So right in our medical equipment management plan, we wrote the word comfort. And it gave us the opportunity to get involved with TVs, beds, nurse calls, phones, right? And we actually can, in a very not quantifiable way, we can draw that the HCAP scores are somewhat elevated because of our involvement in that process, right? Because think about it. whether you've ever been a patient or you know somebody's been a patient in the hospital, and somebody says, how was your experience? What are they basing it on? Was my bed comfortable? Was it working? Did my TV work so I could pass the time away? Did my phone work so I could communicate with my family? Nurse call. Did it work and somebody call my you? So those are the things. And so to me, that's the challenge that we'll throw out here, is this thought-provoking perspective. What is it that you can do, whether it's cybersecurity, whatever the case is, what can you do to go back and bring value to your organization and then demonstrate the ROI, because you now are going to go figure out what your margin is and figure out what that's going to do for bringing back value to your organization.
And whether you're an ISO or an in-house person, what does this do? What does some of these things do? What I describe it to do, it's a fabric, right? You now get woven into the fabric of that organization. And it's very difficult to tear a fabric and when it's so tightly woven. And, doing stuff like, somebody's going to do this stuff, right?
Somebody has to do this.
Yeah, I mean, your C-suite, because it's a problem they have to fix. What's the easy fix for them to do? Contract it out, right? Outsource it, exactly. So that's value to your organization. Doing more with less, Dave.
So big question. I'll be very surprised if anybody raises their hand on this. Who has all the resources that they need and don't need any other?
No hands, Dave.
What's up with that?
No hands.
Look, at the end of the day, I've been telling this for a long, long time. Starting out 10, 15 years ago when we started doing presentations, we were talking about the fact that, so how many people know how many people in this industry? Anybody want to guess? How many HTM professionals do you think we have in the United States? Anybody want to guess? About 50,000.
Yeah,
45, 50,000. Anybody want to guess what percentage we are down within now and within the next 3 to 5 years? Over 20%. Okay, so think about that. That's a lot of people. Oh, by the way, 24 schools have closed in the last couple of years. And it's less than 300 individuals coming in a formal process. So we're losing 3,000 to 5,000 a year, and we're getting 200 to 300 a year. I'm not a rocket scientist, but I can tell you that the math doesn't add up real quick. So we got to figure out a way to do what we're doing today differently. AEM is a great. So when AEM first came out, it was a great way for us to figure out how to take the resources that we have and make them more productive. But it's not enough. If we continue to do what we're doing today, the resources that we don't have, everyone in this room will fail, because you won't be 100% compliant in anything I can promise you. And I don't have an answer, by the way. I know you guys are all sitting and thinking, okay, you're going to tell us.
what's the magic bullet, Dave? Come on.
I don't have it. I don't, but I just regularly believe rooms like this, we can figure it out. And I think that we're going to have to find advocacies and organizations and finding ways to come back together and work with the OEMs to try to find an alternative solution. But we also have to pass that and get it past that, right? So, I guess I'm sure everybody in this room uses an AEM. I'm sure it's effective. Question would become.
Wait a minute. Does anybody not use an AEM? Yeah.
So why not? Just out of curiosity.
Title 22 basically says that.
California. I'll discuss that in a second. Dan?
And we don't use it because we have it modified. Most of the people have problems with certain beds, infusion pumps, and things of that nature. So we decided not to go the AEM route, but we gave ourselves a grace period. So instead of having to do it in the month that it's due, we've given it a 30-day grace period. So you actually have an expanded window, and that was our solution.
30 days prior and 30 days after?
No, that's not 90 days, just the month that it's due and 30 days
So
after.
60 days.
60 days. It gives us the time to do it. And when we're asked, if the surveyor asks us if we have an AEM, we can say not a true AEM, but we do extend the frequencies. But we don't do anything. We don't change the maintenance requirements or the cycles. We're still doing a month at 6 month interval.
So your compliance, you're 100%?
Yeah.
And what percentage are you're tracking what you're not actually doing? So it could not locate.
Right, could not locate,
you-
right, yeah. So that's low single digit percentage. And in our MEMP, we have it written up that we close the work order as in use, but then that generates a corrective work order that we have to follow up, get it when it comes off that patient, do the PM and document it and such. So we've written our policy.
Yes, ma'am.
Sure.
Not one, but that's a corporate decision for a larger entity, and so I have very little say in that.
Is that, you think it's a liability? Are they afraid of liability, or what do you think? Or maybe they don't understand the AEM process?
Yeah, making sure that they're doing things according to,
Manufacturer.
yeah.
They've had people go cowboy on them in the past and they just said, don't.
You know, because to today's first points about talking to the subject matter is, you know, look at my hair, I'm getting older, heavier. Grayer, some of us are grayer.
That's way too close to home.
Our birthday girl over there, she's really early here today. But you know, the resources are going to become more and more difficult to get to that compliance that we talked about, Dave. And, you know, I want to exploit as much technology as I can to get at my planned maintenance. I want to exploit every tool that CMS gives us to get our compliance for planned maintenance. And one of those tools is the AAM program. And what does that allow us to do? It allows us to focus on the heavier iron stuff and provide that value proposition to my employer, like a well-developed radiology program, a radiation oncology program, a clinical laboratory program. We really need to get at those clinical laboratory vendors, OEMs. You've got to establish that, because the money that's being spent in the lab is huge.
Yeah, so, yeah, I just want to, so by law, depending on the interpretation, I want to just address your comment. Everyone in the state of California addresses it in the same fashion that you and your organization. I will tell you that I've had infinite success at challenging, in that when the inspector actually comes on site, and if you sit down and explain the CMS / Joint Commission / ENG or anybody else, I've never had an incident where they haven't said, okay, they may not say totally agree with it, but it doesn't necessarily, it's never been an incident where it's come back to bite us.
I had a CDPH surveyor at one of my hospitals in California, and you know, we don't use stickers. So you know, I had the CEO on the phone calling me, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So get with the surveyor, and I talked to her. She'd been doing this for, you know, 50 years or something. So I said, well, where in is it specifically spelled out that I have to put stickers on? She goes, well, no, it's Nancy's rule. I was like, Nancy, I can't, you know, do stuff just because of it. It's Nancy's rule. I said, I appreciate it. And I started to explain to her what we're doing and about not making clinical staff responsible for equipment care, but we're responsible for equipment care, making them focus on patient care. You're already making me be 100% compliant with my planned maintenance program. To do that, I don't have any choice. Now, of course, I'm going to have cannot locate, and I'm going to have device and uses, but we have processes for that. Much like Dan just explained his process, we keep the work order open, and when, you know, we document the communication steps, right? We document in our CMS product when we go up and talk to the nurse or the nurse manager. Hey, when that vent comes off, Mrs. Jones, please make sure somebody, you know, the unit clerk calls us. Make sure that we get the notification so that we can do the PM, close the work order. On the do not locates, as it goes through 2 cycles, we retire the device. And now it has burned us once or twice because you retire. Well, we found out one ultrasound machine was over in the medical office building, right? This is Laurel. So an ultrasound machine, you know, we missed it 2 cycles. It was over in medical office building. Well, guess what? Now we're getting a joint commission survey. And was it a CCU? Was it?
Yeah, the ICU.
It was in the ICU area. That ultrasound machine. What? We didn't even know it existed at that point, you know, and, stuff like that happens. We just have to be able to explain that. But Nancy never cited us, never wrote us up. It was a neat conversation we had with her, but we run a corporate program. You know, we have our MEMP is pretty much standardized. There's a little customization locally, just because of the committees involved. But for the most part, we try to run the same way. Could you go ahead, Dan?
Kudos to your administrative team there, though, because when you had that instance, it's an isolated instance, but they could easily overreact and say, this could have been cured if you had stickers on it.
Yeah.
And, your relationship must have been solid enough where they knew that the program was in good position.
No, actually, everything was documented when it was taken out, where it was put on, on the CMS system, so.
But the argument could have been, if the nursing staff had seen it and had a big sticker on it,
Oh,
they would have called you proactively.
You would.
No, they wouldn't have.
Thank you, Nicole.
Shit, on the picture there, and it's working. Holy crap. They had that ultrasound machine and they weren't gonna let nobody know.
That's right.
They had that baby.
It's
Because that's what they got
too
served
high in
for.
cost.
Says the radiology professional. Scotty.
So I had a similar incident with the stickers. Same thing, CDPH came in. CDPH said, where's the sticker? How does the nurse know that it's safe for use? So the nurse is supposed to know when it's safe for use by looking at the equipment before they hook it up to a patient, turning it on, trying.
Our own self-test?
Yeah.
Yeah, it works.
And she says, well, no, you need to have your sticker on. So the sticker only says that we're good to go at that moment in time.
Yes,
And then back to this gentleman's point over here, my administration did not back me up. And I actually went around to go get people that I knew would have my back. I went to the compliance officer and to the chief nursing officer. We all sat down and it ended up, I now have to write in my policy that I'm going to put stickers on every device. And the write-up came under the ruling of all metering equipment and devices have to be PM per manufacturer specifications. It doesn't make any sense. And I got wrote up for it. And it's
The manufacturer
to this day.
The manufacturer requires a PM sticker?
That's what the write-up was, and they were unwilling to fight it. So this is 4 years ago, and it's still our standard.
Hey man, we have job openings at UHS and we'll have your back.
Consultant can tell them something different, don't believe everything they tell them.
If you pay someone to tell
Yes.
Well, I have a couple of things. One of the things, I want to piggyback on what he said a minute ago, that we ended up with Joint Vermont's surveyor dinging us because my MIP policy says that we do about risk score, what's on the AEM program and what's not. And we do a PM on those items. Well, they came to us, that, well, you didn't do PMs on these items. I said, there is no manufacturer PM on it. But your policy says that you do a PM. And I'm like, okay, so now I have to go back and redo my MIP to say, unless the vendor has no PM. And I said, okay, this is the simple thing I have heard. But now I'm seeing that infection prevention is getting involved in our hospital and doing trace roundups on the equipment and reuse stickers. But one of the things that we're coming across is under the AEM program, when there is an IFU, an every update or something like that, we have to go back through those items that's on the AEM if there was a change to how you do the maintenance on it and take it off. So we're having to do regular reviews of the AEM program for equipment that might have an update that we have to pull it off AEM. And I was wondering if anybody else doing the same. You guys do a review as every given updates if those items now have a PM where they didn't have one.
I would say that your organization's pretty progressive, actually.
They are,
To even have that conversation. I mean, that's one of the things that I don't, anybody else want to comment on what you'll say? My only response to all of this is that what I like to take away is that nobody should, every single person in this room, I guarantee you, has a perspective from where you sit today. Everyone you then are challenged and faced with either your administration or regulatory agent or a state body walking in and giving you their perspective. And the opportunity that's presented to you is to understand it well enough so you can defend your position. And if you're not doing that, that would be it. You need to understand it to the point that you can do what Chris did when they challenged him on the sticker thing. Say respectfully, but it's not required. And be able to defend and stand on it. So the challenge is for all of you here, and it happens every day, it gets interpreted, and this is where it's all out. Rules are changing every day. Our worlds are changing every day. The pandemic changed things. It's imperative that you all spend time to understand it well enough so that you can formulate an opinion and then be able to defend that.
Want to talk on
I think so. Somebody else.
people management?
I guess real quickly is anybody has something that they want to share as to how they get resources that nobody else knows about. Because if you do, first of all, you're gonna make a lot of money. Second of all, I need to. So a lot of you got any resources or talent that they know how to get hold of that they want to share with us?
You know, I do think we're gonna have to start looking beyond, as Dave mentioned, the schools are going away. So you're gonna have to start to look beyond HTM program. Sure, yeah.
I know that in Northern Colorado, they just started a certification program for combatants, and it's not a full degree. It's like a year-long certification.
Certificate.
Where you can get some of these young people in quicker and get them into the system, and it seems to be working out pretty well.
You got a Colorado person.
My company's actually part of that. And,
Okay.
and we even go out to high schools, do career days. Bring electric surges out, let them cut hot dogs and stuff. And, going to colleges, I mean, we're literally reaching out every place we can go. We're hooked up with all the different recruiters, everything else. We still have 5, 6 positions we can't fill.
You guys have a resource in the Colorado area, no doubt. And Monty, he's got, a good school that online training. Sherelle and I were just talking earlier this afternoon on a podcast about the same subject matter. And, where the next student's going to come from. Everybody learns differently. I'm a visual learner. I have to be hands-on, tactile learning. Others can watch a video online. I can't do it, but others can do that. So I think there's a lot of opportunities with schools that do a lot of this online. Matthew, go ahead.
I actually am not a biomed, I'm just very good.
Yeah, even better.
But right now, and because we work ourselves out of work, and with the budget cuts that came through the last year with COVID, there is a huge mass of IT people that within 6 months can be doing the same job if you give them the grace, and they can walk in and start, that's where you have shortfalls. And we're not talking about one or two people, we're down to thousands.
Right. So Jim Anderson and I did a presentation at 11 o'clock this morning, and he talked about one of his staff, and Don Allen is the regional director for out here. Tierra, again. She was doing copiers. She worked for Verico, which is a vendor that we use for copier maintenance and management. And she kept on hammering Don. Every time she saw Don in the hospital, and she was running around picking up copiers and I want to be a biomed. I want to be a biomed. I want to be a biomed. And he took the chance and he gave her that opportunity. You talked about it.
I just want to mention, she has no phone number, no email, there's no way to contact her.
Amy. Yes. Thank you. AED apprenticeship program. Yes.
So Dave and I had this conversation just shortly, a little while ago. When I grew up and got into this industry, I didn't have a biomed degree. There was, there was only a handful of biomed schools. You went to electronic school or you went to the military, right? We're not getting those military crossovers anymore. I mean, Fitzsimmons.
UAMs are starting up.
I mean, they're hiring somewhere else. We've got to grow our own. I mean, there's so many people that are looking for those opportunities. IT, right? Electronics. We've got here in the Las Vegas area, we've got people that work on vending machines. They've got troubleshooting experience. We got people that work on, kids that go to school to learn how to work on automobiles and stuff like this. We've got to tap into those resources, and we, as hospitals and employers, we've got to start these guys at the bottom and teach them from the bottom up. This is why we did it back in
Enid, Oklahoma.
Enid, Oklahoma. We hired a guy that was he came from the cable industry. He was a cable.
Yeah.
Chris, Joe,
Okay, so I want to say this because we had this talk yesterday in the leadership summit as well. Where are we going to find our next technicians? We got the apprenticeship program, we got all these other things out here that we're trying to find. I ended up giving a talk to college kids. Well, I'm not going to call them kids, but they're all adults. However, all of them were looking for where can I get a job? How can I get a job? I'm telling them about job opportunities out there. The college that I did with, they had 99 students in the cut, wait. And I'm sitting here like, okay, don't say that the technicians don't exist, they do. But I also said to this team, I sent 4 resumes out to a company of entry-level technicians, and all of them were turned down because they didn't have any experience. And I said, how are you want to do an apprenticeship program, but there are technicians out there, they're on level 1. No, you're not going to get the BMed 2 and 3 with experience, because those are 10. You're going to have to make.
Well, that's the good thing about them. They don't come with the prior negatives, right? You get to write them up in your own program.
Yeah, they get to know your vision, they get to know your organization's way of doing things. But guess what? And I want you all to think about this. When you guys are bringing in technicians with no degrees or no backgrounds or anything like that, be mindful that when they are ready to transition from your organization and go somewhere else, they are not going to be readily picked up based on experience. Somebody's going to look at them and turn them down because they have no education. So while we're thinking about how this is coming, I know that right now it is a great answer, but you got to think about the future of that technician after they leave you. What did you leave them with? They had a job with you, and then when you fired them because they didn't work out, what are their options now? Hey, I've been working on infusion pumps for 2 years. Can I be a biomed at your hospital? No, you have no degree, and that's the only experience you have. Unless that company is really, really desperate, they're not going to pick it up.
So that has
I've been holding on from Nicole.
That is a really good point. I mean,
You got to think about how you're leaving them. When you pull them in here, after they leave you, where are they going to go? Because they won't have that experience, and now they have to find someone else to look past the fact that they have no education and take a chance on them becoming to their hospital.
Joel, I've hired guys that had more master's degrees than I can ever think of. You know what? They were some of my worst employees.
well, that's absolutely true. That's true too. And the point I was going to try to make was, you were saying that there was a lack of educational opportunities out there. Schools were closing. This is beginning to be the catalyst of the issue of finding educated team members so that you can grow them up. But if you look at the vendor that was next to MIS out there, had that virtual thing.
And
I am not a biomed person. I can pick up a screwdriver and I'm about as dangerous as that could be. Because it doesn't mean I'm going to use the screwdriver for the thing I'm supposed to. They make great cameras if you look them over. But I've been around the equipment enough that I was able to prepare that bolus injector quickly, efficiently, and easily, because I knew what I was looking at least in terms of what the equipment was supposed to do. I'm walking in at least with that. But just the fact that if you use that virtual aspect, are there educational facilities out there that have that online didactic that could do that kind of a knowledge-based didactic wise and then come in as a student or a student in that regard? Maybe that would help fill some of those gaps.
we've obviously struck a nerve here because there's 20 hands that are up.
Melanie,
What I do.
I'm bringing up maybe an idea, coming from the military, coming from the biomed school, from the Army. we as so good, we didn't, for reserve soldiers who are going right into the civilian world, going to the civilian field, for biomed, they had to look for resources. My idea is if you are a company and say you want to bring in some biomed one straight out of the schoolhouse, Fort Sam Houston is where the school is for biomed. And if you want to go ahead and just drop your card at the office or say, hey, if we can design like maybe an expo, something for a career expo for the soldiers to go around and possibly find careers before they step out into the workforce, that might be a good idea.
How about the Facebook page too?
Yeah.
For military.
Or better yet, why don't these businesses and companies go and partner with these colleges and say, I'll take everybody that you got graduating.
Yeah.
Let me have first line of refusal to your graduates.
So I
You can give
think
a
there's,
donation
There are
bag.
so I think there's
that
two,
now.
I think we have two different sets of students, right? We have the students that want to go to college, right? They want the college education. We have a huge group of people that are available to us today that are only limited by the change of the verbiage in our policies, in our job descriptions. You change that education requirement to high school diploma for an entry-level person, and then change your next level to say years served. And you will find employment. We found
Most
Tierra this way.
organizations have, they rate it as this or equivalent.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. But when you require a specific educational status or educational degree, then that limits you. It does. And then you have to wait for, right now, we have to wait for those students to go through the education process.
Yeah, Don, let me get Don.
I think a piece is missing from this room. I'm sorry, I'm the newbie in this room, I promise you, other than husband and wife over there. When multi-medical systems hired me, and I went for my first interview, and I sold biomedical, I thought I was going to be working with a bunch of scientists on weird stuff. I've never heard of biomedical prior to 4 years ago. The problem is the communication. I mean, I know the gadgets in the hospital need to get fixed, but I had never even thought it was a career. So everybody in this room, you're all in this industry, and you're looking at it from the view lens of being in this industry. You need to step out and maybe talk to me and husband Biomed here, because we had no idea. And I assure you that outside of this room in this conference, if we all walked up to the casino right now and just randomly picked people and said, hi, you know all of
They
it,
have no idea.
they would have no clue.
It gets worse.
So maybe it's an educational factor.
Within our own group, we can decide, HTM, biomedical engineer, fix it, man, but in our own industry, we can't do it. You know, I think we're gonna get into a time thing, but.
Yeah, we are.
Well, I'll just make one comment.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what we've done. We hired people that were talented, didn't have credentials, for instance, didn't have an undergraduate degree or even an associate degree. What we committed to is funding their associate degree, community college. With that, they had to stay with us for at least 3 years, the year after. And then, to your point, that gave them something to build off of.
Right.
Where, when they went out, if they outgrew us, wanted to expand their horizons, and whatever reason they left the company, then they had something to work with, and they weren't just left out there with all this work experience and no formal credential. And so we've done that, and the other thing we've done, we do a lot of people service for all kinds of different, for OEMs, for medical devices. But one thing that we've learned is some of the devices, heavy electronics. Pursue electrical engineer graduates. We from Marquette University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, we probably hired 18 electrical engineers. Now they will outgrow us, they have.
Yeah.
We see turnover after 3 years. They're young.
They're ready to go.
And, but I'll tell you what, come to us with the right, competencies, They're-
Carol Davis School?
They show up for work, they get paid more than they were in college, of course. But we expect them to work.
Yep.
But our plan is, so we work with two universities, put a program in place. They've been our source for engineers, and a lot of them have gone back to school, full-fledged biomedical, some at masters, some of them. So I think there are ways to be creative, but you have to show an interest in them, not just you filling a position.
The warm body.
Future growth. Yeah.
So, hey, I want to, in the interest of time, we're going to shift a little gears because there is a topic we want to talk about, because all the stuff that we've been talking about may not matter a whole lot in the next few years if this kind of stuff doesn't go away. So the topic is right to repair. Dave and I are keenly involved in this subject matter. Hopefully you're familiar with it.
Right to repair, who knows? That's great.
Yeah.
3 years ago when I started these conversations, literally, we were lucky to get one year. It's a good start.
Yes.
Isn't this about farm equipment?
Yeah, great. Yeah, I loved it with farm equipment.
Yeah. And cell phones. Yes.
Want to give a brief update?
Sure, so, first of all, so I appreciate the fact that most of you know about right to repair. How many of you know 27 states right now are on legal battles trying to figure out what that looks like? So your own state may be involved. I would encourage you to get involved. You know, go to your hospital administrators. Most hospitals have lobbyists. Most people have, most states have governors and whatnot. Just make them aware, make them understand this is important. So we're sort of the medical device servicing community. Oh, man, let me ask you again. Who's heard of the medical device servicing company?
Yeah, a lot fewer hands.
Okay, I was like really getting nervous. So that's it. So that started, it came about because of the initial interest in 2016 that was generated by MITA, suggesting that we all suck. We all are not good at doing our jobs. We're creating less safe, less quality environments in what we do. And so FDA initiated in December of 2018 a steering committee. At the time, it was called Medical Device Servicing Collaborative Community. Now it's Medical Device Servicing Community because we're trying to get the actual loan kids to the community. Talk about that later. What the point is you need to understand, it's not nearly as bad as it was 2 years ago, but it's pretty important. If MITA, if the OEMs win at what they're trying to do, unless you're going to award for a manufacturer, you're not. Probably not going to get to that level, but there's going to be some changes, and it's going to impact what we do every day. I promise. It's coming.
So, and the rub, if you will, is that the OEMs are saying, well, these folks, ISOs, in-house departments, don't have the proper tools and education to service this equipment like we can service the equipment, and therefore they should not, they don't even have to comply with GMP or ISO 1345, GMP, good manufacturing processing, and ISO 1345, quality management systems, things like that. They don't have to comply with that, so therefore they shouldn't be qualified to work on the devices. That's essentially, the Cliff Notes version of what they're allocating. And, this has been going on for 1990.
Well, 1996 is when they first started. That's when they came out and they basically said, look, these guys are taking up our market share. Get them to stop. Government said, no, that's not gonna happen. And they came back in 2006 and they said, well, they're getting into our pocket. They're costing us money, and it's going to start costing more for equipment. Government said, won't go away. So in 2016, and I don't know what the trend is about the year 6, but
Yeah.
in 2016, they did something that you got to commend them. Came back and they said, they're affecting lives. They're killing people. They're causing less safe, less quality servicing medical equipment. Now the government listened, and now we're in a situation.
Yeah, they presented, data. They presented pictures. Yeah.
Pictures from the 70s.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not saying there's lies, there's damn lies, and then there's statistics.
Yes, ma'am.
You can make
And-
them say whatever you want.
And, through the participation of a lot of people that started compiling data, we were able to demonstrate to the FDA, hey, we really don't need to have the action we take. Nicole?
Didn't the COVID situation help our case?
Well, so to Chris's point, so just so you know, they did a study, independent study, right? They asked for people to give feedback on white papers, and long story short, thanks to ECRI and many other people, they came back and said, look, there is no substantial evidence to demonstrate that people that are non-OEMs are performing less safe or less quality service than employees. However, this is the piece you need to understand. They said, but there's no evidence to say there isn't either. And so that's how the steering committee and other things got formulated. And to your point, something that's helped us, but now is fallen off the radar screen is because of the pandemic, and everybody saw the news instances around the banks and how they couldn't get service, and the manufacturers wouldn't come into the hospital because of the pandemic. Also, yes, they got us a lot of press, and we got a lot of Congress people that actually said, hey, wait a minute, we got to do something about this. But if you notice, they put out an injunction that said, during the pandemic, we're going to relax these things, and manufacturers are going to be forced to work with non-OEMs. The pandemic's about to end, and our whole opportunities, the window is closed.
And
That's
the,
the fact.
and the money is the money, right? So the OEMs, so we can't even see the
How much,
margins.
what's the number? How many billions? How many
11
billions?
billion. 11 billion is
billion.
the estimated number that this industry represents. It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. So to Chris's point, and I actually literally as I was walking, just reminded him, came home and said, I want to get involved. So asked him to send me an email. This is where we're suggesting you guys start. It's this easy. We, through the medical device servicing community, have created a LinkedIn page. Anybody can join it. We are putting things out there that give you access to information, is telling you what's going on. There are 5 subcommittees within the medical device servicing community that are actively working on this industry's behalf, your all's behalf, to do things that will give us evidence to demonstrate that we are good, as good as manufacturing. I also am going to be very careful, and I want to speak to you specifically when I say this, because it's important that you choose your words carefully. So the FDA turned to me one day, because I used to say, well, I want to show that I can live, OEMs can do it better. Well, as soon as you say better, you're now a manufacturer, because you're doing something to that device that would alter what the manufacturer said you should be doing. So don't use that term. You're as good. That's the end. So anyways, as an example, one of the committees that we have out there right now is we put together some information around best practices to make sure that you train your people the appropriate way. We put it out there in a white paper. We're asking the world to give us feedback so that we can make sure it's as perfect as it possibly can. We basically made our, all the way to a standard. For now, it's best practice white paper. But we're looking for input. And there's alternatives. Is anybody here for OEM in here right now? There's no alternative because in candor, this is the opportunity for the OEMs to give us feedback too. We're going to win in either case. They're not going to submit feedback. They had a choice. That was their choice. They chose not to. Well, they are going to give us feedback, and it's going to be something that we can address. So in either event, we're getting where we need to be, just a lot slower. Just so you guys understand what we're up against, they're spending $500,000 a quarter lobbying the Congress to get their case heard and what they want. We're not. Not just leaving it at that. I will tell you that on Bar Alliance Group that we have been to Congress about 10, 12 times. I've met with a dozen or so Congress people, senators, and we are working in it directly, but not really to the level they are.
There's other groups, IAMers is another group out there that's working on our behalf. I mean, they're working on their behalf and their members, which you can become a member of. But Rob Kerwin is their attorney, and Rob has been a phenomenal.
Just to give Rob a plug, he's the reason we're here. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Medusa bill, but I mean, it was about this thick, and there was a paragraph about that thick in it, and if it had been signed back in 2016, we probably wouldn't be working. We'd be out of a job because it was legislation that said, don't allow these people to work. And they literally had a pen to paper, and Rob, in the last 5 minutes before they actually signed it, was able to show them that, wait, we need to look into this. Hence the reason why the FDA got involved, hence the reason we're sitting here today, but it was that close, and Rob's got it.
Yes.
And the hearing in the Capitol building.
Yeah.
Processed the issue of that.
Oh, yeah. That Rob is an amazing proponent for our career field.
I think we're out of time.
I think that's it. Perfect timing.
Listen, all we want to do is inspire you guys to think outside the box, right? I mean, that's where we're at this point. If we continue to do the same thing that we've been doing, in my case, 35 years, we're not going to be here in 35. We won't be here in 10 years. So we gotta think outside the box, challenge yourselves to do something different. Dave, you were gonna say something?
No, I'm just gonna say thank you, because,